It's time for Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
I'm not a Republican, but if I was, I would be extremely concerned about censorship in social media, which is a real thing. Censorship of Republican ideas and conservative ideas is absolutely a real thing. It's not just real, it's accepted as being the right thing to do by certain organizations. I mean, they've been caught on camera and hidden camera talking about the ways that you can silence conservative voices. For sure, conservatives are being discriminated against on social media by social media platforms. And even if you're not banning them from those platforms, if you're shadow banning them, if you're making it very difficult for people to find them, which is real. It's a real thing that they do. Like if you have a post on social media, it doesn't just go up in chronological order anymore. Now it's affected by an algorithm. They can, in certain social media platforms, use that algorithm to discriminate. So they can decide, hey, this guy keeps chirping on and on about Hillary Clinton's war crimes and all this. We don't need this guy around, okay? We don't need this guy and all of his right-wing bull and all his Make America Great Again bull. So we'll shadow ban him. And so they can shove you into this category where it's very difficult to find your page. And it's very difficult for you to show up. And a lot of people have seen their views drop drastically. There's a woman named Megan Murphy. Well, on Twitter, she wrote, "A man is never a woman." They told her she has to take down that tweet. So you know what she did? She made a screenshot of it. She took down that tweet, and then she posted a picture of the screenshot. And then they banned her for life. You know who's not banned for life? O.J. Simpson. Double homicide, armed kidnapping. He's fine. But this lady who's just said a man is never a woman, which biologically is correct.
Johnny and the Professor.
Well, it's Johnny and the Professor.
Common sense for senseless times.
Where we talk politics, pop culture, and pancakes.
Okay. Pancakes are good.
So, our guest today.
Our guest today is Jim Walsh, our local representative here in Aberdeen, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, good to talk to you guys again. We're busy making sausage here on the floor of the house in Olympia.
Oh, boy.
That's a process that, again, most people probably don't want to see. So what
Exactly. You got the reference.
I was looking at the legislature's, websites, and I was looking at some of the things that came through recently. You guys, they've been busy. Let's see, what is it? ID cards for homeless people was one of the ones I saw. And what was the other one? Making sure that transsexual and gay military get proper benefits.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of, there are a lot of bills. The key to the legislative session is we have to pick our fights. We have to prioritize. And really, we were focused on a handful of bills that had to do with some major gun control priorities, which are anti-priorities to my mind,
yes.
And some tax proposals to increase taxes, and then a couple of housing kind of property rights bills. So that's our focus, and we try to either fix those by amendment or just knock them down in floor debate and by parliamentary procedure delay, and in order to get those handful of really bad bills knocked down, we have to sort of allow a couple of smaller bills to get through, and it's a process, but I think we've done a pretty good job preventing some of the worst bills that you might have heard about or read in the paper about, particularly with regards to gun control and taxes.
The law that's going forth to make eliminate kind of single-family dwellings.
Yeah, that's controversial. I believe the version that you probably read about is a state Senate version, so we haven't gotten that over in the State House yet.
Right.
It actually, there are some silver linings to that bill. I mean, the title is bad, and on first blush you think it's bad, but I actually think there's some parts of that bill we can salvage that are good, that basically give more autonomy and more decision-making discretion to local jurisdictions, particularly counties. So that one might not be as bad as it seems on first blush. I think there are ways we could get that to a place where it would just give the decision-making power back to the locals, and that's not a bad thing. That's kind of the silver lining of that one. As far as telling them what they can't and can permit to build, I don't agree with that part of the bill, but we can. I think that's one where we could probably get it to a place where it's okay, just focused on that local decision-making piece.
Well, anytime you put the power back in the people, you're generally doing what the Constitution ultimately intended. I think
that's what we try to do. Yeah, I agree.
It's been an interesting couple of weeks in the large scale of politics. The president was at the Daytona 500, and the
president's very clever at how he uses the media. He does things, I think, instinctively that other national politicians hire stabs of people to try to figure out. And I think one of the things I admire about him is how he just seems to have a nose for activity, events that will speak to people directly. And that's always been one of his strengths, whether it's using Twitter or social media or using television and mainstream media. He seems to know what clicks with lots of people.
I've always thought he hasn't really gotten a fair shake in all this. And then, you get Barr saying, when he tweets, it kind of makes it hard for me to do my job. And then he goes and tweets again. It's like, oh, God.
You can't separate the good from the bad. And,
right.
You have to take it as a piece. And, we get caught up in the day-to-day, minute-to-minute stuff with national politicians, and really what you need to do is think about the long-term effects. We just had a big a tax revenue forecast report in Olympia, and we're collecting, just from existing taxes without any increases, like $1 billion over a 4-year period above projections. So we're collecting taxes at a rapid rate here. And part of the reason we're collecting all this extra money and have more to spare to use for new projects and funding new activities is we're not spending as much on state benefits as we were. A lot of people are off unemployment. They're off Medicaid and food stamps, and there's more money to spare in Olympia. So that's a sign of a good economy, of course.
Right.
And that's the kind of thing the president ought to be measured on.
But now Obama's taking credit for the economy now and the jobs.
What is the saying? Success has many midwives.
So what do you think of that?
I don't care who takes the credit. All I care is that the numbers are better.
But it does tell you the economy must be doing really well if the left is finally saying the economy is doing so well that Barack Obama must have done it. Because, of course, Donald Trump can't do anything good.
What I watch is the bottom line. And the bottom line is the economy is doing pretty well. It's not doing great everywhere, but it's doing better, and more people are off benefits. And I think that's the best thing. I mean, we see locally all the time what getting on benefits and being on food stamps for a long time, it's demoralizing to people. People get depressed when they're on that. And to have people get off and not be claiming it as much as they used to and standing on their own feet more is a great thing. And I don't care who takes the credit for it. All I care is that we get the results.
Well, in reality, there are actually more jobs available now than people looking for them. I mean, from a practical point of view, unemployment nationally is almost zero. I mean, there are
get them working, and then you can sort of look at how do we get them a better job? How do we increase their wages? How do we get them up to that family wage number on what they're earning? And that's kind of, I think, the stage where we're at now. Our unemployment numbers are down. They could always be lower, but they're down. Now it's how do we bring in the kind of business that'll bring people up the ladder, and that's the focus of what I've been working on.
Which, of course, is exactly what you should be doing. I mean, it is Grace Harbor does have a little bit higher unemployment than the national average, but again, even the time I've been here, I've noticed it's went down dramatically. And most people, if they're willing to look for a job, I've never really found anybody who was willing to work who couldn't find a job.
Yeah, and I mean, there are things we can do to do better still. I mean, the port for the near future is probably our best growth engine, so businesses in and around the port will be where we can grow. But we're doing some stuff to reclaim and reestablish some of our timber industry that's just been devastated in the last couple of decades. And it's not going to be giant steps. It's going to be kind of small steps. But I think we can get some timber production back up again higher, and that, as you both know, is a good, what do you call it, a halo effect. I mean, if we can get timber production up, all kinds of other support industries also profit from that. So that's something I think we'll see in the next, near to midterm, a couple of years time frame.
Do you ever see like bills or anything and you're kind of going, what was this person thinking when they thought this up? Like it was just so incredibly stupid or time wasting or just like, oh my gosh, why are you here kind of thing? You ever run into that?
Only about 4 out of 5 days, Johnny.
Really? Wow.
Like, there's a thing that goes on in Olympia and in D.C. too called the Hero Bill. And what a Hero Bill is a bill that's important to a particular lawmaker, legislator, for reasons that are particular to their area and usually to a group of people in their area. So it's a bill that's very important to a very small group of people, but it makes that legislator look like a big hero to those people. And a lot of times the legislator doesn't even really care if the bill becomes law or not. He becomes a hero to that constituency just because the bill ran. And so you get a lot of interesting looking things that way.
Nice.
Now, it sounds like vanity publishing. The idea that, I have a book that's published. Well, you did pay to get it published, and it sounds the same idea. Everyone, what a wonderful person I am, see? Well, welcome to politics, I guess.
Yeah, well, again, what we want to measure by are the long-term effects, not the short-term wonderful person stuff. I mean, we all are wonderful people. We try to be wonderful people, but at the end of the day, the question is what results do we produce, and that's what's important.
Well, people's long-term actions and results rather than just the words they're putting forth, because words are just vibrations in the air generally. So, so as far as anything interesting in the state that we should be knowing that's going right now, any other measures or issues that are coming up we should be taking particular interest in?
Oh, gosh. Well, probably the issue we should be watching most closely right now is the tax stuff. I mean, the governor and his supporters have a very aggressive notion of what a green economy is, and they're trying to use tax policy to encourage favored businesses and industries that they think are green. And you got to watch that stuff when you try to pick winners and manage economic development and business in a very particular way with tax policy. You're just running into unintended consequences all the time, and that's what we're watching out for now. It's not sexy, but in the last days of our session here, that's going to be probably the biggest risk. And
ultimately, I mean, when people do preferential tax treatment, the majority in the politician situation is they're doing it just to acquire votes.
That's exactly right.
Acquire votes.
Exactly right. The preferential tax treatments are tricky business. If they're really well thought out and structured, they can help an industry, but a lot of times they end up blowing back on the people who sponsor them.
Well, and again, there's a lot of people talk about, I want my green this and my green that, and I go, okay, well, you want energy sources then that are going to be clean. Yet I don't. Again, how many are any of these green policies putting up nuclear power plants? I mean, there's
a lot of crazy stuff going on here about alternative energy sources. I mean, that conversation would take 2 hours. But you know my position. We're sitting on top of one of the cleanest, greatest renewable energy sources in the world, in the globe, and that's our hydroelectric system. And we need to protect that and maintain it and continue to use it as an economic advantage over other parts of the world. And any talk that there is of pulling dams or doing other things that would screw up our hydroelectric system, it's just crazy talk. And we don't need to be pulling dams. We need to be maintaining that hydroelectric system.
And if you need more, you may have to consider even expanding it. As long as there's nothing wrong with using hydroelectric power. Just remember to be a good steward and do it in the way that you don't destroy an environment. You just simply change it. And then, so you want to make sure that you're doing the least impact in the area, that you can accrue what power that you need. I mean, that's how green energy should be run.
Yeah, I mean, the two cleanest forms of energy there are hydroelectric and nuclear, and I'd much rather have hydro going than nuclear, and luckily we have a lot of hydro in this area.
But if you're in areas, other parts of the country, if you seriously want to have the energies you need, the nuclear has to be. If you're California, for example.
Listen, guys, I just got the high sign. I've got to go. We're getting back on the floor.
Oh, thanks for taking time with us.
Short, but
That's all right.
We're under the gun here. Today is the cutoff date for House of Origin bills, and we're running on the floor all the time.
All right. Well, thank you for the time, Jim. We'll talk to you later.
And smack the stupid
smack
people.
the stupid, yeah.
Okay?
That's part of my job.
All right. Thanks, brother.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye. So what do you think, man? You're the smart one of this duo.
Well, Jim is one of the sharp tools in the shed, and he's definitely going toward trying to make our state a better state than what it is. Mm-hmm. But again, the problem is he's in the minority because, again, the Democrats do control the majority in Olympia. So he is right. I hate having to, when he says you have to choose your battles, put all your energy into the ones to avoid the incredibly stupid laws and stop them, and you have to let a few stupid ones. He didn't say that, but I mean it, but right. A few ones that you nobody really needs, but they're not worth the fight. The big ones will decimate the state.
I've seen some of these laws even pass, especially in California, and I'm thinking to myself, what were they thinking even proposing this? It just boggles my mind.
People have a perception of reality, and is exactly what it is. It doesn't have any. Again, I think Jim hit the nail on the head with a lot of it. It's the hero syndrome. Mm-hmm. If you always have to say, when you look at a politician, the first thing they have to say is, I've been elected, and now I can make change. But to stay in power, I'm going to have to keep being reelected. So I'm going to have to do things even that I won't. I'm being given the benefit of the doubt here. I'm going to have to do things that maybe I shouldn't do or that we shouldn't be doing, but it'll make voters want to vote for me, and I'll be able to stay here to do the ultimate better things in the long run. I have to stay in power because only I and my people can save California from the evil Republicans or whatever they think. Because again, there's a lot of people who move into that category. They start putting the opposition as evil rather than just a different point of view, and they're afraid of losing votes. And if you have to embrace constituents that are a particular agenda being put forth, whether it's good or bad for the country, how can you stay in power to do the good if you don't keep getting reelected? So you must embrace those people, even though you may not even agree with them yourself.
What many people had suspected for a long time has turned out to be true. The DNC secretly chose their nominee over a year before the primary elections even occurred.
I'm not saying this is the way it should be, but it's the way people rationalize things in their mind. It's also the way the Nazis put people in the concentration camps. You just follow down that path, and it's the same thing. I have to, we will do the ultimate good, even though they'll be bad in the long run, or they don't even know what they're doing. Some of them I honestly don't think a lot of these people honestly know what they're doing. Remember that most people in Congress, for example, at the national level, very few people write their own laws and bills, and they're written generally by people who work for them, and they only have the general gist of it. I mean, Obamacare was 2,000 pages long. Nobody wrote Obamacare. Committees wrote Obamacare of people that worked for House and Senate people. They didn't write it. They had other people write it for them.
Right.
That's 2,000 pages. That's War and Peace.
Yeah.
That's like three volumes of an encyclopedia, and all of it now is being slowly eliminated because it was a farce and a horrible thing for our health care anyway.
How is it horrible to have health care for people?
2,000 pages. Is it just giving health care benefits to a people? It was ultimately, you're eliminating people's ability to, when you have to make people buy health care whether they want it or not, then you're now making it into a tax. When you're having to restrict on what doctors can do. I mean, it was a lie from the beginning. If you wanted to ensure that 20 million people in America that don't have health care insurance, all you have to do is extend the Medicaid benefit package. Medicaid has generally a minimal financial amount you have to acquire to be on it. All you have to do, and some states have done this in the past, is instead of it being X amount of dollars, you make it 2X amount of dollars. Now more people can get it, but when they get more money, they have to pay a little bit back into it. You would have Medicaid, but you might have to pay for the first $100 a month. And then after that, you would get everything would be covered by Medicaid. In California, they called it Medicare. So Medi-Cal in California. So it's not that hard to fix the problem. And the other thing is allow states interstate competition in healthcare and allowing expanded pharmaceutical importation into the United States. The pharma companies would hate that because, I mean, the largest pharmaceutical company in the world is in India, actually, and it literally has about 35% of the world market or something. We could be importing from them and not have to pay the prices. They do the same level of criteria that our ones in the United States have, but they just dilute it at an international level, and they're about 20% as expensive.
Can you explain how free market healthcare is better than socialized healthcare?
Socialized healthcare means you're having to have the government take over the system and regulate and handle it entirely. A classic example of this would be the VA. Now, I have lots of friends who are veterans, and very seldom have ever heard them say anything nice about the VA. Whenever you have a government run over and take over an organization, it's going to now be run at a kind of a least common denominator, which again, think of the motor vehicles. How well is the Department of Motor Vehicles run? Because it's run by a government, and that's an example of what you're talking about when you're dealing with healthcare. If you have private healthcare, private people, especially if you can advertise your prices and you have competition. I mean, a lot of this is restricted. I can buy my car insurance from anywhere in the country, but I have to buy my health insurance from only places in Washington.
Yeah. So how does that supposed to be better?
It isn't. That's the whole point. But that's one of the things, the restrictions. Obamacare has things on that. It restricted the buying of interstate health policies. And a lot of states have restrictions on that, which is stupid. It's just telling you that you're trying to regulate and keep it in control. Obamacare was designed to put everybody under government health care because the easiest way to keep people in line is to control their energy, their food, and their health services, and to take away their weapons. I mean, it's all the same thing.
So how many of these have we accomplished so far?
Virginia's trying right now, though there was a big loss there on that, was trying to take away pretty much the Second Amendment. There are states all over that are fighting and arguing about that. But again, if you want to change the Second Amendment, amend the Constitution. I've got a problem with it. If you want to say that we don't have the right to bear arms, fine. Then get, 2/3 of the states to agree with you and amend the Constitution. If not, then shut the hell up.
Oh, you're so full of hate.
No, I get tired of ridiculously stupid people. There's a solution to the problem. If you don't like the Electoral College, fine, then amend the Constitution. That's how you get rid of the Electoral College. The Constitution has an amendment process, but it requires a vast majority of the states to agree with you, and you're not going to get every small state in this country to say, yes, I want to give away my votes to California and New York, because that's what would entail. Montana's never going to vote for it, or Delaware, or these little states, because they get a little more power in the electoral process from that. It's part of the balance of our system. They've been trying to regulate our health care, but as far as energy, I mean, again, isn't the green energy policies the idea of regulating the energy so that the elites control it and the people are going to have to, if they want their energy, they're going to have to go along? Isn't food stamps programs a way of regulating people getting the food they can eat, the government by being beholden to the government?
I think there are just far too many stupid people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in positions of influence that have no idea what they're doing, and then we have to pay the price.
Well, that's an interesting point. Is she just the idiot she seems to be, or does she have handlers? I don't want to get conspiracy theory, but there are people who believe that the elite in this country should be making the decisions, and the rest of us should just shut up and go along. And if we're not willing to give them that authority, then they're going to find ways to make things harder for us. They're going to take away our guns. They're going to, so we can't fight back. They're going to try to limit our health care. They're going to try to limit our resources until the point, again, starving unarmed people are easy to control.
Right. So
is it just, because I mean, that's what she's talking about. Her Green Deal nonsense. I mean, obviously she didn't write it. She doesn't have, I don't know her personally, but there's no indication from listening to her talk that she had the mental capabilities to actually write that document. Mm-hmm. But so it was obviously written by other people. And that's the point, is who is she? Who are a part of it? Is it just the elites trying to keep the people in control?
Well, it's time for a break, and coming up, we will tackle our pop culture segment.
This is Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
You only have to do 3 things to not end up in permanent poverty in the United States. Finish high school, get a full-time job, wait to get married to have kids. That's it. You do those 3 things, you will not be in permanent poverty in the United States. And everyone is capable of these 3 things. Virtually everyone. Okay, finishing high school, let's face it, the high school system in America, that means basically you know how to read the word cat, and you have to be spotted the C and the T if you want to graduate high school in the United States. Getting a full-time job, jobs are widely available, and waiting to get married before you have children, which to me is the most inexcusable decision that people make. It just means don't put that thing there without that other thing on it until you're married, you morons. Okay.
Contact the show at jpshowfm@gmail.com. This is Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
Look at all the times the Inspector General has made recommendations. The Director of the FBI, the Deputy Director of the FBI, the Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI, all recommended for prosecution. Nobody willing to go after one of their own.
Judge Napolitano was talking about that, the foreman. She's an attorney. She should have mentioned that.
She'd be brought up before the bar, and she should lose her law license.
Since you are describing what people refer to as the swamp.
Yes.
Alive and well at the Department of Justice.
Well, it's being weeded out. These people need to be prosecuted. How about the person who actually changes the documentation to obtain the FISA warrant?
Contact the show at jpshowfm@gmail.com.
It's Johnny and the Professor, where we talk politics, pop culture, and pancakes.
Interesting things going on in the world. I saw an undeniable indication that the economy is doing really good.
But Obama's taking credit for it.
And that was exactly what it was. The economy got so good, has gotten so good, that Obama's now has to try to take
It was 11 years ago that I put forth these policies, and now we are reaping the benefits because of me and my work.
Yeah.
Everything is doing better.
Well, we were talking earlier about people, about vanity and power, so that tells you a lot about Barack Obama. In reality, most presidents...
Prove him wrong.
Well, it's easy. The unemployment rate, remember, it was 6 and 7%, and it never got low as it is now. And the employment rate went down afterwards.
But he's saying that it took this long for his policies.
That would preclude that any policy that Trump has done had nothing to do with it. Trump would have to have gone along with his plan exactly for that to be true, because surely Trump could have destroyed his policy if he'd wanted to in the last 3 years. What he did is, I give credit, the economy of the United States got really bad, and Barack Obama did get a bad economy. Bush handed him a bad one because Bush was not very good in the economy.
But I got to say, I didn't know I would do this, but I'm coming to Bush's defense, because the Bush administration did warn people about Fannie and Freddie, and they said, hey, there might be a problem here, and this problem may go beyond real estate here. It's just, we got a problem. We need an oversight committee. And all I heard were a bunch of Democrats like Barney Frank saying, I don't see a problem here. I don't see a problem. And you know what? As a matter of fact, we need to give more risky loans out, and we got to do this more. That's what I see. And then next thing you know, boom, we got a crash. Am I wrong?
The Bush administration raised red flags starting in April 2001 that the size of mortgage giants Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is, quote, a potential problem because financial trouble in either one of them could, quote, cause strong repercussions in financial markets. In 2003, the White House warning about Fannie and Freddie was upgraded to a systemic risk that could spread beyond just the housing sector. In fall of 2003, the Bush administration was pushing Congress hard to create a new federal agency to regulate and supervise Fannie and Freddie. But then Treasury Secretary Snow was getting a lot of pushback from Democratic Congressman Barney Frank.
Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are not in a crisis.
In fact, Frank said the federal government should be encouraging Fannie and Freddie to do more to get low-income families into homes. And he believed too many people had a sky-is-falling mentality.
I think we see entities that are fundamentally sound financially and withstand some of the disaster scenarios. And even if there were a problem, the federal government doesn't bail them out. But the more pressure there is there, then the less I think we see in terms of affordable housing.
The legislation was blocked.
The Republicans had their parts of it too, because they were involved in big banking also. So I'm not cutting. I give more blame to the Democrats on it, because they were trying to give votes. They were trying to buy votes with loans.
The Bush administration did warn. They were saying, hey, we should do something here.
But he also is the president of the United States and has a lot of power, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and he didn't make use of the power. So I will say, yes, he warned, but he didn't do what he needed to do.
Okay.
And then Obama came in, and he didn't have any choice. Of course, we'd almost hit the bottom at that point. There's a point it's either going to crash and burn, or it's going to get better. And the American economy, given an opportunity, will generally get better. I mean, Barack Obama did a lot of things actually that slowed it down, because he's super into rules and regulations and restrictions on business.
Right.
I mean, all the jobs that were not going to come back because you'd need a magic wand, they're just not going to come back. And of course, now we've had 1 million of them come back during the Trump administration.
No, that was probably Obama's policies 11 years ago.
He probably found that magic wand. He couldn't remember where he had stuck it.
He got those jobs back 11 years ago.
And we just found out about it now.
Right.
We're at the University of Maryland asking students what about Obama's presidency they're most thankful for. Let's see what they have to say.
Yeah, I liked him as a president. I thought he was very respectful.
But I think he did a great job just being an ambassador for humanity in general.
I think he was a great president.
Big fan. Big fan?
Big fan.
I would say that I'm a fan.
What do you think of President Obama?
I love him.
I like him. I think I'm most thankful for his work with the LGBT policies and legalizing gay marriage.
That was the Supreme Court, no?
Oh, yeah, you're right. I don't know, actually.
The main thing I think that he did was try to unify this country, and
Do you feel like the country is more unified now than it was 8 years ago?
That's a tough question to answer.
The Affordable Care Act,
Are you enrolled in Obamacare?
I am.
And how do you feel? I know in Virginia and Maryland the premiums went up pretty high.
Right. It's just part of this process. Nothing goes smoothly right away. You gotta, your wallet's not the most important thing. Helping people.
I think a lot of people would disagree with you.
We thank him for his Affordable Care Act.
So what would you say to someone who has seen their premiums go up under the Affordable Care Act?
I don't even, my mom pays my insurance. I know nothing about insurance, so honestly, I don't know.
I think he did accomplish great things throughout his presidency.
What kind of things do you view as him accomplishing?
Well, he, I think, took out the troops in Afghanistan. He really worked on that, ending. Well, it's not over, but,
I think the Affordable Care Act is one, which I guess is an easy one for everybody to say.
What would be your message to someone that didn't like Obamacare because of the rising premiums?
That's a good question.
Well, I know that he wanted to increase government spending, which would boost the economy, which he eventually did. Okay. So I think I did a good job with that.
What do you think you would write first in this thank you card?
Thank you for being the funniest president of all time.
He does seem to have a really good sense of humor. It shows up a lot on social media.
Are there any specific policy things that you could think of that you were a fan of?
Not specific necessarily. I don't know. There's not one specific policy that I like.
You want to go first? Okay.
I have no idea, actually.
No, I don't know.
Okay.
As of right now, nothing is coming to mind.
Can I phone a friend? Well, like I said, mostly I think in case of presidents generally, economies have a lot of other factors in it. But I can tell you for a fact, if the economy sucks, the president gets the blame for it. If the economy is great, generally the president gets the blame for it, unless the previous president comes and say, no, it's me, it's me, it's me.
This is Orange County area. This is a large homeless encampment behind me. Thousands of people homeless in California, Americans displaced and on the street, while literally the Democrat politicians are doing everything they can to bring in more refugees and other people that they're going to house and help. Let's help our Americans first. And that's why Donald Trump says America first.
They're getting to the point where they're going to eventually have a nominee, and Obama's going to jump back into the ring and start having to back people. So he's trying to remind people what a wonderful statesman he was and what a brilliant international leader he was and all these other things that are people are entitled to their own delusions. But
I'm wondering why nobody in the press, nobody anywhere has asked Obama or any of his cabinet anything about Biden's quid pro quo or any of the FBI, his FBI spying on the Trump campaign, any of that. Nobody's asked him one single question about that, and I'm wondering why.
Well, I've come to the conclusion that you can hate Trump for whatever reasons, but if you ask me, what's one of the best things the Trump administration has done? It's revealed how one-sided the news media is.
Yeah.
That it's in the pocket and in the corner for one particular political ideology. 90% of it is. Mm-hmm. And therefore, they're not going to ask those questions. Why didn't he get asked those questions when he was in office? They say, oh, they were hard on Obama. They were hard on Obama like hitting you with pillows. I mean, they come after Trump with howitzers and missiles, and apparently he can take it. But I mean, in this case, they'll never gonna ask him about it. And as a matter of fact, they'll probably carry water the other direction. When it finally comes out investigations, and there are investigations going on that are going to probably come out and reveal some of these shenanigans, and hopefully some people will be punished for it.
God, I hope so.
I really would be really nice. But I'm absolutely sure that CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times and all of them, they'll carry water for him. They'll try to make it as little. Try to lessen the effect of it as much as they can.
Minimize it
as much as they can. Just saying.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's I was watching the news also recently, and they were talking about Bloomberg. You know, little what Trump calls him, little Mikey.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Bloomberg, who is $60 billion. He's rich as God.
Right.
But one of the big things on his big organization and his news media and all the money he's made in is he's got a lot of really tight connections with China.
Yeah, he loves China.
And and talks about the fact, well, if you want to do business in China, then your papers just have to print what they allow you to print.
Right.
And just doesn't have a problem with that.
All you have to do is become a communist, and you can do all sorts of things in China.
Well, that's what Bernie Sanders thinks, at least, too. So, which is funny that here's a guy who's supporting the big communist nation who's a billionaire, and then you got Bernie Sanders on this other side yelling about the billionaires, and he's a communist, too.
Right.
Of course, he's also Comrade Sanders wants to be the commissar. He wants to be amongst the elite that are in charge, and then everybody else will have equal level of misery. A man that says,
equal level of misery.
Well, so that it's weird. It's like he's literally said bread lines are a good thing. It indicates that you have bread. I go, well, no bleep, Sherlock. I'm sorry, but but you're standing in line for 8 hours for a loaf of bread, where you live in a country where you can walk into any corner in this country, convenience store, whatever, and for a few dollars have a loaf of bread.
Yeah, because of capitalism.
Everything, like I said, Sanders' hypocrisy is that he's still after the billionaires, but he's not after the millionaires anymore because he's a millionaire.
Right. How did he get so much money?
That's a good question.
He's not mowed a yard before in his life.
Apparently he's never mowed a yard. He's never done anything, including his time in Congress. I mean, they get decently paid for being in Congress. His wife is a college official, and they make decent money too. But he has 3 houses worth a couple $1 million. I mean, that strikes me. He's way better than I'm doing. So I don't know exactly. I guess I'm not communist or corrupt enough to be able to do it.
Well, or a politician.
They all seem to be able to make money. It's a very interesting thing. The Clintons left the White House broke, and they're worth a couple $100 million now. The Obamas left with hardly any money, and they're worth a couple $100 billion now. Didn't his documentary win an Academy Award? The director went up there and quoted I saw that in the Academy Awards, the producer director of it went up there and quoted the "Workers of the World Unite" from the Communist Manifesto.
Oh yeah.
From making millions of dollars on this documentary, being all these people, and you're up there quoting the Communist Manifesto.
Yeah.
Because again, they don't mind as long as they're elite and they're in charge. So it's the whole structure. When you look at China, China has an elite that rules, and then it has everybody else with equal level of misery.
Right.
And all the Soviet Union was the same way. Venezuela, there's still people in Venezuela that are doing well, and then the rest of them are starving and eating their cats and stuff. So I mean, yeah, it works. It works perfect for like Bernie Sanders. He believes he's an elite, so he believes he's the one that should be in charge, and he knows what to do. So did Stalin, so did Hitler, so did Mao.
Let's bring it back home. In Washington State, lawmakers considering a bill that would eliminate single-family zoning in most cities with more than 10,000 people. What does that mean?
Well, it means that your houses could be easily designated as multi-person dwellings. So, like for example, I've got 2 bedrooms. Well, 2 bedrooms leased upstairs. I could just rent out the top of my house really easy, even if I'm not normally in a zone where I could do that. Most residential zones, you're not allowed to do that. Or you could turn apartments into duplexes really easy, or you could turn, It strikes me as this has got to be a Seattle law, though. I mean, I don't really see any.
Mike, what's the point of this law?
Well, the idea would be to create. I don't think I could think of is they're trying to allow for cheaper housing. They're trying to, rather than having to lower to people to be able to rent their units out, so that there's a weird issue dealing with the homeless. They say that the problem with the homeless is they don't have places to stay, and there is some truth in that in areas that are very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also very low-end housing even in those areas too. I guess if everybody can turn their houses into multi-unit, then there'll be plenty of places for people to stay. Of course, we are talking about politicians, and this is the first I've really heard of it. So I'm just shooting from the hip here.
I do see like areas where they mow the trees down, and then they really quickly build really cheap apartments, and that's the affordable housing, right?
Right.
When do we run out of room?
Well, when you do, people generally build up. I mean, the argument for New York would be a good one on that. There is a point, and it has to be how many people can the state take before, if you want to keep your wild lands, if you want to keep your parks and all that, there is a point you're going to have to, as population grows, you have to use more and more land for it. So I don't know. You can always, like I said, you can always build up.
You see, and I used to not be so much for Wild Olympics until I just got to thinking, we're running out of room. People are buying more land to just mow it down and build more. And then when does it stop? When do we stop? Anyway.
So yeah, let's see what else has been going on in the news. There was during this week.
Boy Scouts filed for bankruptcy.
Is it and in the Boy Scouts, is it just issues of molestation, or are they also getting sued? Because I know there were some issues on whether they're opening it up to girls. There were lawsuits based on that. Other things also.
They shouldn't call it the Boy Scouts then.
I would agree. I don't personally have any problem with the idea.
They have Girl Scouts. Why couldn't girls go into Girl Scouts and boys go into Boy Scouts?
Well, what happened is the Girl Scouts started allowing boys, because their membership was dropping down, so they started allowing boys to join the Girl Scouts, and then they wanted the Boy Scouts to go the other way.
They wonder why we're so confused about our preferred pronouns.
I just don't think that people understand that. I mean, I know this is not politically correct, but I get news for you. There's males and females in mammalian creatures, and there are men and women in human beings. And there are distinct differences.
You are so toxic.
Yeah, well, you're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
You're so full of hate.
But it's just,
how dare you?
It's just there are differences between it. I mean, you get together with. I mean, my own personal examples. I mean, my wife has a dance troupe. And and they're all over there. All the dance troupe are women, though they do have a guy in the belly dance troupe who comes and practice with them, but doesn't perform with them.
Mm-hmm.
And when they get together, I mean, there's so much estrogen in the air, I can hardly walk in the room. And I go away. I mean, I have 4 older sisters. I'm comfortable with women. I have no problem with it all. But they're talking about the stuff they're interested in, and I become an inhibiting factor if I'm there because I'm a guy.
Okay.
And there are differences between it. I think men should be able to have men's clubs and women should have women's clubs, and they should have things they can do separate of each other. You can, if you want to have an organization that is, the junior rangers or something that allows both boys and girls into it, and you plan your activities according, more power. But there's nothing wrong with having a Boy Scouts and a Girl Scouts. But I know I'm old-fashioned. I just happen to look at the world and say bull, cow, male, female. Moose, male, female. Bull, cow.
Right.
I mean, it's just. I'm sorry. They're human beings, male, female. What do I know?
Stranger Things. Are you familiar with that TV show?
Yes, I've watched,
on Netflix?
I watched both the seasons of it. Yeah.
Actually, I think there's 3 seasons, because season 4 they're working on
right
right
3
now.
Seasons.
Yeah, they're working on season 4. I don't know how I feel about the sheriff guy not being in it.
Well, he went off and made the Hellboy movie that nobody wanted to see made.
Right, and plus he's in the new Black Widow movie. He's like plays her brother or something like that.
I think he's I can't remember. There's a comic book character who is the Russian the Red Guardian, I think is what he's called.
The Captain America equivalent.
The Captain America of the Soviet Union, and I think it was Red Guardian was the name.
Right.
So I think that's who he's playing in that.
So yeah, they're working on Stranger Things season 4. They're also working on season 2 of The Mandalorian, and rumor has it that Filoni and Favreau have banned Kathleen Kennedy from the set. Now, I don't know if I believe this because, I mean, she is the head of Lucasfilm. The Mandalorian is a Lucasfilm production. That would be like trying to ban Boss Bill from the studio.
And you say that like it's a bad thing. No. Okay.
But
now
you know
that
what
we're
I
no
mean?
longer on the air, there's a big difference between that. In that analogy, Boss Bill knows what he's doing and is a benefit to this station as compared to Kathleen Kennedy. She couldn't find her butt if she had one of the homing devices that the Mandalorian uses to track down his bounties.
Okay. How do you really feel?
Well, I mean, everything about the Star Wars has been disappointing since she's been involved in it, except for the Mandalorian,
right?
And Rogue One, I thought.
Yeah, Rogue One was decent, except for they killed everybody off.
Well, and actually, the fact that they did, I actually thought was kind of interesting. I thought that was kind of a bold.
Yeah.
Of course, and the whole thing is you want to watch the end to watch Darth Vader kick ass.
Yeah, that is cool.
That's the big part about that. Because I said I ran into somebody who said, "Oh, I saw it, but I didn't." Did you watch the end of it? Oh no, once everybody died, I left. I go, you really need to see the end of this movie.
You missed the best part.
You missed the best part. I mean, it actually encourages me because it makes me tend to think that they're trying to keep a level of quality up and distance themselves. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of just run these Mandalorian storylines and kind of ignore the last 3 movies entirely.
If you're Kathleen Kennedy and you hear that you've been banned from the set, do you still just show up and barge your way onto the set?
Well, it depends on whether it's not security can throw her out.
Right. And could they?
Well, like I said, it depends on the rules and on how that it works. I mean, remember, they may be shooting on an individual studio and lot. She may not have any authority in those areas. She might be able to come and we'll cut you. It's one of those cases of what can a CEO actually do, to someone down in the field, unless you're going to cut their funding, which would literally say, okay, let's get rid of the only Star Wars that everybody seems to be enjoying. I don't understand how people could do it. I'm a fairly vain fellow, but I don't think I have enough ego to realize that, half the people that will have watched these movies think that they're trash. And you're the primary cause of it. You're the captain of the ship. It doesn't matter why it hit the reef. You're still responsible for the ship hitting the reef.
Right.
And that could be a nice rumor. It might just be something to placate the people like myself who think that the last Star Wars movies were trash. Therefore, I'm more likely to want to watch The Mandalorian because in this case, they're sticking it to the woman rather than sticking it to the man. Now, as far as Stranger Things, I thought the first season was the best of Stranger Things. Yeah. It had the kids were smaller. There's that always. It's kind of like, I looked at Stranger Things and thought of it. Isn't this like Goonies? Goonies, but with better special effects.
Kinda, yeah.
And that you have these different kids moving through this dangerous situation. As far as Hopper was the sheriff's character, if memory serves me. In the last one, giving spoilers, it looked like he died, but it was one of those teleported through dimension kind of deaths. So did he die, or is he actually just in another reality now, or in what do they call the underside, the dark side,
the upside down world?
The upside down,
the nether world, or
no, I think they call it the upside down.
Yeah, something like that.
Nether world. That's more of the D&D terms for it when they were using their D&D analogies.
Yeah, I don't remember.
An interesting thing, that girl who played 11 in it, though, went on and done a lot more work, and she proved in that she was a very good little actress, and she's probably, if she isn't destroyed by fame, she'll probably be a good actress for.
It'll be the toxic males in Hollywood.
Yeah, we'll do it. That's probably.
Well, that'll do it for this episode. You want to let them know where to get a hold of us?
Well, you want to email us at jpshowfm@gmail.com. And anything there, any comments and questions, we'll do. You, of course, can go to YouTube and hunt for Johnny and the Professor, put in quotation marks, and you'll find our audios there. I just uploaded last week's a few days ago. And, of course, we're here on KBKW at 2 o'clock on Saturday.
This has been Johnny and the Professor. Politics.
This is actually what makes this whole thing so comical.
Pop culture.
This is something that they're going to be prioritizing, and that is diversity. Now, this is stupid.
Common sense in senseless times.